Hello everyone, welcome back for another podcast. In today's podcast, I'm going to be talking about this chair that I made. So this could possibly be described as a dowel chair or a ladder back chair, although it has only got one backrest in it, and I do believe typically ladder back chairs have got, you know, several pieces of backrest, and hence that's why they get the ladder back chair name from. One of the things with this chair that I wanted, and I kind of did accomplish in a way, was that I wanted it to be easy to make and for people of all skill levels to be able to make it, and it not being too difficult, which I think I did kind of, you know, succeed with. So if you're a little bit anxious about making a chair, and I have actually spoken to a couple of people that feel they are a little bit anxious, I think with this you don't have to be, because I think it can be very forgiving. And the steps that I used to make the chair, I thought were, you know, I thought they were pretty easy. What I will say is that the weaving on the top, so just for those of you that are watching on YouTube, the weaving on the top, I personally think it looks really cool, and it's very comfortable. This is a very comfortable seat to sit in, at least for your bum. Although it does have some problems with the backrest, which I will get into. I did use kiln dried timber with this, and the reason I use kiln dried timber is because it's easier for me personally to get a hold of, and I'm guessing it's a lot easier for a lot of people to get a hold of, although it could be vice versa for different people depending on where they live in England or indeed in the rest of the world. But me personally, it is easier for me to get my hands on kiln dried. Some of the considerations you might want to give yourself if you are going to do a construction like this, or to have, is that you do really need to be getting some straight grain wood. So for those of you that don't know, I'm going to give you a very quick example. If you are making a chair and you are using dowels, spindles, or even the legs themselves, if you've got grain, let's just say for a spindle or a dowel, if you've got the grain that is running straight from the left side and the right side, it's coming towards the middle, and then all of a sudden the grain runs out midway, that's going to be very weak. And one of the issues with this is that if there's any sort of force that goes on that section, which there will be, it's just gonna fracture. It's gonna be a clean fracture, and obviously you don't want that to happen. So really, when you're making like any sort of leg, whether it be a leg for a coffee table, a chair, a dining table, anything like that, or indeed dowel, you want the grain to run as straight as possible from the left to the right, and that's going to be a lot stronger, and it's going to be a lot harder for you to snap that. One of the problems with this type of chair, if you haven't got straight grain, especially for the spindles, you might actually be on the chair and you might just be wiggling your bum to get yourself comfortable, or wiggling yourself in underneath the dining table getting ready to eat your food, so you know you're not going to drop food on your lap, etc. By you wiggling, you're actually creating racking. So when you're creating racking, that's the force that's going to snap the spindle. So that is one consideration that you do have to consider when you are going to build something like this. Obviously, originally, constructions like this were built with green wood, and very quickly, for those of you that don't understand why, or you haven't read into this. With green wood, when you're splitting green wood, and green wood is a term for, you know, like it's still wet inside, so there's still a lot of moisture and still a lot of water, and it hasn't been taken to a kiln, or it hasn't been left slabbed, you know, for maybe you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 year type of thing. So it's a lot of moisture inside of it. So when you're actually splitting this wood, when you split the wood, when it splits will run with the grain. So let's just say we've got a log in front of us and you're trying to split that wood 90 degrees to the ground. So what will happen is that when you're hitting an axe or a throw, where is my throw? I don't know where my throw. Oh, there's my throw. So if you're using an axe or a throw, when you're bashing that throw, let's just say, the wood will start to split, and it doesn't matter where you want that throw to go. If that grain is running on a diagonal down towards the ground, that throw will kind of go there. You do have a little bit of control with a throw, but ultimately the wood will dictate to a degree where you are going. And obviously this is a good thing, because if I put my throw in and I split the first section and it goes on a diagonal, the next section I split, I know it's probably going to go on a diagonal, sorry. So I can position where I want it to be, you know, the thickness of that, and, you know, start bashing down and see where it goes. So it should technically, you know, follow, I'm exaggerating here on the diagonal by the way, but it should follow the grain or the split of the first split you've done, if that makes sense. So the first split and the second split, they should kind of follow each other, because the grain should be running in the same direction. You know, it doesn't always work like that. But if that's following if the two splits are parallel to each other, or, you know, to a degree, that's going to be very strong, obviously, and that's, you know, that's kind of what you want. You want a lot of strength, and that's obviously why one of the reasons why green wood is used. Another reason, which I think is really clever, I know I'm ranting on a bit here, but it's a good consideration, and a lot of people might know this, but if you are using green wood, what was done in the past, and obviously it is still used today, this technique, is that the dowels will be dried out, as will the legs. So, you know, the legs will be processed, the dowels will be processed, but they'll not be processed 100%. So I don't know, for argument's sake, I'm not really sure on the percentage of moisture, but let's just say this is 50% moisture. This leg is 50% moisture content, and we've got a dowel which is 50% moisture content. So what was done in the past, and obviously some people still use this technique, I think the majority of professional chair makers that are making these styles of chair will actually take away the dowel, and they will dry the dowel more. Sometimes they've got little kilns and whatnot. I've heard of some people putting them, you know, next to a log burner, you know, obviously if it's winter time, so on and so forth. So what this will do, this will get, you know, quite a lot of moisture out of the wood, and they will basically finish off, let's just say the dowel, they will basically finish off the dowel, you know, get it to its right diameter, so on and so forth. And then some people actually go to a further step, and the sections that are actually going to go into the leg, they'll actually put these dowels, or the ends of the dowels, into heated sand, which again will sap out more moisture. And they can also put the ends into devices, kind of like a mini kiln, where they'll have light bulbs inside a insulated box, and again that's just to pull the moisture out. So the idea with this is that when this goes into the hole, the dowel goes into the hole, and there's glue added, so obviously the moisture from the glue is going to expand the edge of the dowel, you know, making the dowel expand into the hole, which is good, and it's going to provide a nice tight fit. So the second part to this is that the legs, because the legs haven't been dried out as much as the dowels, we will process the legs and then, you know, drill the holes and everything, glue everything together. So because this, for argument's sake, is 50% moisture, the leg has then got to lose some of that moisture. So when you bring that, you know, into a house or maybe just in the workshop, you know, a lot of chair makers will actually just hang the chairs up and just let them, you know, fully dry out and see if there's any movement or any cracks, so on and so forth. But as these legs will dry, they'll actually shrink, and because they're shrinking, the hole shrinks as well. So you've got the dowel which is going to expand a little bit with the moisture of the glue, and because you've over dried the edges of it, so you've got that expansion of the dowel, and then you've got the contraction or the shrinking of the leg. So as the dowel wants to get bigger, the leg is actually closing in on itself. So again, that's creating a nice tight joint. A little bit long of an explanation, but I thought it's a really good, you know, thing for people to know if you don't already know it. So obviously, with that being said, I didn't have that with this, so I had to be, you know, pretty decent with me fit. Something what I did do with the fit is that when I made the dowels slightly oversized, and I compressed the very edges of the dowel with a hammer, and this works extremely well. And it's the same sort of principle, is that instead of using heat to draw the moisture out, you're actually just compressing the fibers off the wood, and when you add the glue and let the glue dry, the fibers will actually expand. That's the idea behind it. So that's what I did do with this, although admittedly there was one or two that I wasn't overly happy with, but they were still okay, but I would have preferred for them to be a little bit tighter. As it stands, as I said before, I haven't had any issues with the chair. Obviously the chair gets used daily, and just by sitting in it, you know, shuffling about the chair, it does create racking, and you know, all the joints are totally fine. So, you know, it seems like I've done a decent job with that. For making the dowels, I've just used, or I made a simple jig. This is super simple. It's basically 2 V's cut out. I think I did do a video of this. I'll link it in the description if I did. I'm sure I did. How to make one of these. They're very simple. So basically, you've got your square piece of timber, and these are clamped into place, and you basically put the timber in, and you would just use a hand plane. So this could be done on, in my case, it could have been done on the Roman workbench. I have got a shave horse attachment and stuff. Again, with that, if you want to kind of look at that, there's a free ebook, no sign up or anything like that. There'll be links in the description. There's links everywhere for that PDF. So that will show you how to make a Roman workbench, and obviously it's got the plans, you know, to add on the shave horse attachment and so on and so forth. So I did, however, choose to make the dowels in an upright position, and I did choose to use my number 4 plane and my little apron plane. So between the two of these, it was quite quick to actually make the dowels. Dowels were really quick to make. The chair legs themselves, believe it or not, were pretty quick to make. So the back chair legs, as you can see, they do have an angle on them, and this is just to aid in the backrest section. Obviously, you know, you've got your taper at the bottom and the taper on the front as well, which just gives it that little bit of, you know, visual type of thing. The backrest, obviously, as you can see, has a slight little dip. I think that may be, for me, it may be too much of a dip, even though I've done this. So I think in future designs of this, or, you know, changes which I'm going to make, I'm not sure if I'm just going to do it, you know, straight, or if not straight, it'll only be a slight curvature, because I think that's just too much, or at least for me it is. One of the things that I liked about the legs, or the back legs, even the front legs per se, is that they were really quick to make. And that was the whole idea behind this whole chair, was just to try and make the chair easy to make but quick to make. So as I said, the legs are, you know, they're really easy to make, and I did actually do a build video on this. Again, I'll put the link in the description. The build video, I do actually show cutting this with a Ryoba saw, and that's how easy it is. You know, I did actually want to do that, so I did do one with a Ryoba saw, and I did do one with my track saw. The one thing I will say, what I think I screwed up with, is that I built these with boards and I glued them together. So what I actually done, the boards were like 20mm thick. So I cut 4 of these out separately, then I glued them together. I think what would have been better would have been to actually glue the 2 sections together first and then cut them. It wasn't a great hardship, but I just think it just would have been quicker to do that, and that's what I'm going to do with future, you know, builds of this type of chair. Should I be using that together, I am actually going to be looking to, you know, get maybe some 40mm thick material, but obviously I'll have to see what's available at the time. Another thing that I thought might slow myself down, or might slow other people down, is the drilling off the holes. So with things like this, you do have to make sure that your holes are you know, drilled at the right angle. So what I did was use a drill guide. So this is a simple drill guide. I'll put a link in the description for anyone that wants to get one of these. And basically, I'd used this in conjunction with building this bench, and it worked very well to drill all the dog holes. So I applied this with the chair, and I have to say, you know, the holes I drilled were pretty good. I don't think they were 100%, you know, 90 degrees, but they were really good, they were really close, and that was good enough for me. So I was really happy, and for the sake, I think this was like about £12. So what I did was to drill a pilot hole, and I followed that pilot hole up with a 1/4 inch bit, and the 1/4 inch bits just followed the pilot hole. So, you know, it's, for me, this was a no-brainer to get the speed of the build, you know, to pick the speed up a little bit, should we say, sorry. One thing I didn't do, which I should have done with the drilling, was that I did not drill the dowels before I actually cut the legs out, which would have been a bit easier, because I do believe on the back legs I did actually have to position the drill on the bench and kind of use the top of the bench as a reference. If I had have left the waste material on, used this little jig and then drilled it, it would have been a lot easier, but obviously I didn't do that. But for anyone that is going to be making this sort of chair or wants to make this sort of chair, it's definitely going to be easier for you to do that. So, you know, you've only got to use a piece of tape to, you know, to roughly get your depth of where you want the drill to go, and just take into consideration that you're going to be removing that material. I took the time and I made a little template. So the legs and the fitment of the dowel, even making the dowel and making the legs, I think that was all pretty easy. And I was really happy with the way the kind of turned out, although I am going to change the design a little bit, which I'm going to talk about shortly. One of the problems that I haven't really sorted out, and I want to sort out, or like, you know, get some ideas going, was the backrest. Because what I done with the backrest was to actually just use a board of material, and I just removed some material with a spoke shave and maybe my plane, I can't quite remember now, just to give it that little bit of curvature. But for me, it's not enough curvature, so I'm going to try and show you on the camera. You probably might not be able to see this on the camera, but there's very little curvature on this, and I personally find that it is a bit of an issue. So, I mean, looking at it from this angle or straight forward, it looks pretty good, but then I come round to the side and I can see there's very little curvature. It doesn't look that good. But beyond it looking like that, I will say that the backrest does irritate us a little bit. I do actually spend a lot of time with this chair, or rather sitting in this chair, because I do like the seat, the weave portion of the seat, because it's so comfortable and you can sit there for quite some time. Well, at least I could sit there for quite some time. And I actually still do, but the backrest bothers us because there's just not enough curvature in the backrest. And that's one of the problems I haven't solved yet. So obviously I want that to be easy to do. And the issue with the backrest is that if I'm not using green wood and I want to steam bend it, I can soak wood, but I'm still not guaranteed to have a good bend. I know some people have had success with it. I have tried it in the past to try and steam bend kiln dried wood, and I just haven't had no success with it. Whether that be, you know, some fault of my own, not giving it enough time to soak the water up, or maybe it's been a bad selection of wood from myself. I just haven't had any success with it. So if I wanted to steam bend it, I am probably looking at having to go and source some green wood, which is kind of defeating the object of the build. The other option would be to, you know, get some thin strips of, you know, veneer-like type stuff and build a form and, you know, glue, put it in a form, clamp it up, let it dry. So that's an option. The issue with that is that you would basically have to buy the thin strips if you don't have a bandsaw. I don't have a bandsaw, so if I wanted the thin strips, I would literally have to saw them by hand, or buy them from you know, somewhere like British Hardwoods here in the UK. That's the only place that's popping to mind that's got them. So, you know, that sells like the thin strips. I think they do like, I think it's 2.5 millimeters. So we'd have to buy, you know, several pieces of that and bend it or put it in a form. So those are kind of the options that I have, but everybody might not have those options. Everybody might not have the extra money to go and buy, you know, the thin sections for bending. They might not have a bandsaw, and they might not want to, like me, you know, spend hours and hours, you know, cutting the wood and then having to plane it up afterwards. The planing up afterwards isn't per se too much of an issue, but the sewing all those strips would be, I think. So that is a problem, and I kind of still need to, you know, maybe sort something out with that. Come up with some sort of an idea, and as of yet I haven't come up with an idea. The ideas that I have come up with are the ones I've just discussed. Either, you know, bite the bullet, get some green wood, or, you know, pay the money and get some veneer, or, you know, saw it, which again I don't particularly want to do. So if you've got any ideas, let us know in the comments what you guys would do. Another thing that I am going to change, and this is kind of going to be going more towards us, or getting closer towards the original designs of these, or maybe not the original designs, but like the designs that I have seen and what I do like, is actually to make these legs hexagonal. So with these legs, I did actually round them off the corners. At first I did like it, but every time I kind of look at this now, I'm kind of thinking to myself, I wish I had made that hexagonal. And I do think it's going to look better hexagonal. So I'm most likely, the next build I'm going to do, I am going to make the legs hexagonal. I mean, could possibly do it with the dowels as well, although it'll probably only be very slightly, I think, because I don't think they look too good when the, you know, when it's like a clear hexagonal, or at least for me they don't. So it might only be, you know, kind of very slight on the dowels. I'll have to give that a little bit of a thought. Obviously with the backrest as well, with the way it connects to the legs, in this particular chair it is actually mortised in, and if I'm going to start, you know, steam bending, or, you know, using a form and gluing things together, obviously it's going to change the angle of the mortise, or however, whatever I do to, you know, kind of you know, change it type of thing. I did actually have a bit of an idea where I could have just, you know, created a bit of a, you know, like a bit of a housing or a half lap, and just glued the whole backrest actually onto the leg and put a couple of screws through. And I forget the technique now. Is it like maybe a rivet technique? I seen this years ago. I think it was in a fine woodworking magazine. And basically a brass screw is used. Once the brass screw is in place, you then file the head down, so you get rid of the, you know, the slot, you know, the screw head slot, and it just looks like a brass rivet. And it does actually look quite attractive. So that was kind of one of the avenues I was thinking about going down, but again, I haven't made my mind up. It would possibly simplify this a little bit more, but again, I haven't made my mind up about that. So that's kind of one of the things I need to sort out. Again, the whole idea with this chair, I just wanted it to be simple. Finally, the weaving on the chair. So the weaving on the chair, as I said before, it looks really, really cool, and it's very, very comfortable. I think this is probably the first time I've ever sat in a chair weaved like this, and obviously done it for like a good amount of time. It's extremely comfortable. What I've used on this, I used paracord because I had paracord. If I had to use Danish string, the Danish string would have cost us more money. And at the time I didn't want to pay that money. So traditionally, I believe these seats are woven with hickory bark. Again, for me, I can't just get my hands on hickory bark. I think that's like a bit of a, not a tough one to get, but it would take a bit more looking and, you know, probably a few emails, and it probably costs us a bit more money as well. I did, when I started this, I did kind of think to myself, you know, it would be so nice to get the hickory bark to use on this chair. But again, it was going against the whole thing with the chair. The whole idea was to make this nice and simple for anyone to be able to do this. I mean, you know, if you've got the money, you might be able to go on Amazon like I did and, you know, purchase a paracord. If not, you know, you might have some sort of string or whatever at home, depending on where you live, you know, in what part of the world. You know, you might have, you know, some natural materials to hand that you can, you know, use for this. I don't know. But for me, and probably for people in the UK, it's probably just easier just to go onto Amazon and order it. Order some paracord. There is other materials you can order. You can actually get the Danish cord now on Amazon, although a while ago you couldn't get your hands, or at least I couldn't get my hands on it a few years ago. But with the paracord, it's very strong. Obviously I haven't had no issues. I did go with the colour black for obvious reasons, because you know, this is going to get dirty and grimy and whatever else, and where you may be able to get, you know, dust off it and a bit grime off it, it is going to discolour just with everyday use and dirt and whatever else. So I did opt for the black, which is going to give us a little bit more time before, if I choose to actually, you know, take all this paracord off or cut it off and, you know, reseat it. So probably not with this, because I can imagine the next reiteration of this is going to look better, and unfortunately this little guy is probably going to go the journey or get chopped up into firewood. Who knows? Who knows? He might even end up in here, you know, as a little seat for myself. Let us know what you think in the comments. Do you think building something like this would be easy for you? Have you built chairs like this? Have you built better chairs than this? I would guess that you have built better chairs than this. Do you think these types of chairs are easy compared to a, let's say, a Welsh stick chair? I'd like to hear all your comments in the comments. So until the next time, I shall speak to you guys later.